Picture yourself at 36,000 feet, where the air outside is thin enough to kill in minutes, but the pressurized cabin of an Airbus A320 maintains the comfortable atmosphere of a mountain meadow. In the cabin, the 153 passengers are well settled in, their trust firmly placed in pilots they will never meet. The only sounds are the gentle hum of the engines and the whisper of air conditioning. In the cockpit, both pilots sit motionless in their seats. Their heads are tilted forward, they're still breathing, their bodies relaxed in the way that only comes with complete unconsciousness. Both pilots are asleep. Effectively, this aircraft could now be described as a ghost plane, gliding silently through the skies. No conscious human on board monitors its progress through some of the world's busiest airspace. How could this possibly happen? This is the story of Batik Air Flight 6723. It's January 25th, 2024. At Halu Oleo Airport in Kendari, Indonesia, an Airbus A320, around 7 years old with registration Papa Kilo Lima Uniform Victor, sits on the tarmac with no reports of any technical issues. The aircraft is preparing for what should be a routine flight from Kendari to Jakarta. 4 flight attendants assist 153 passengers as they settle into their seats. Most are likely returning home after visiting family or conducting business in this remote corner of Indonesia's vast archipelago. In the cockpit, 2 pilots run through their checklists for departure. But their stories couldn't be more different. The captain is 32 years old with over 6,000 hours of flying experience. He's well rested, having had 35 hours of rest prior to reporting for duty. His recent flight time was within regulatory limits. His first officer tells a very different story. Many would say that he's showing textbook signs of cumulative stress. At 28, he's still building experience, with just over 1,600 hours in his logbook. But hours of experience isn't his main problem right now. While he had technically received 53 hours of rest time before this duty period, well within regulatory requirements, the quality of that rest was severely compromised by circumstances that no regulation can adequately address. His scheduled day off had become anything but restful. He and his wife were in the middle of moving house. Most people who've done that would agree it can be exhausting. To get the full context, try adding 1-month-old twins into the mix. His day was spent lifting boxes, setting up furniture, and dealing with all the usual chaos that comes with moving. When night finally came, as any parent of baby twins could tell you, an uninterrupted night's sleep is unlikely. And that's exactly what happened. The first officer woke up several times during the night to help his wife take care of their twin babies. The next day, both pilots were declared fit for duty after routine medical checks performed by a company nurse. Their blood pressure and heart rate were normal, alcohol tests negative. But these tests, designed to catch obvious impairment, cannot measure the quality of sleep or the cumulative weight of stress that would soon prove to be, let's just say, problematic. Before we go any further, we need to take a quick step back to when the flight crew were preparing for their first leg, from Jakarta to Kendari. This is when the first officer mentioned to the captain that he hadn't had proper rest. Red flag. Pilots are supposed to use a personal self-check called I'm Safe: illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, emotion. It's a simple go or no-go tool designed by aviation psychologists to help pilots assess their fitness for duty before each flight. The checklist exists because research consistently shows that people are remarkably poor at evaluating their own impairment, particularly when fatigue is involved. Given the first officer's own disclosure about inadequate rest, the fatigue item should have been flagged long before pushback. But the checklist's effectiveness depends entirely on honest self-assessment, and crucially, on pilots feeling empowered to remove themselves from duty without career consequences. A cultural challenge within the airline industry that extends far beyond any individual decision-making. And that's where this story should have ended. But in the harsh reality of airline operations, pilots face pressure to maintain schedules. Fatigue reporting can be complicated. Pilots may be reluctant to call themselves unfit, even when they know they are. Maybe he felt he could push through another few hours. Maybe he was wrong. The flight crew's first leg, from Jakarta to Kendari, departed at 0314 local time. For that flight, the captain served as pilot flying, while the first officer acted as pilot monitoring. During cruise, the captain, aware of the first officer's lack of proper rest, made a compassionate decision. He let him sleep for about 30 minutes. That may have been his only uninterrupted rest in over 24 hours. It seemed like a practical, humane gesture. Neither pilot realized they were setting a dangerous precedent for what was to come. Weather delays forced a 30-minute holding pattern 14 nautical miles from the airport. Eventually, after conditions improved, they landed safely at Kendari on runway 26 at 0711 local time, parking up at stand number 4. During the transit, both pilots had a quick bite to eat. Their snack was instant noodles, according to the report. A small little detail that reminds us these are real people managing real fatigue with whatever sustenance is available to them. For their second leg, Kendari to Jakarta, Flight 6723 pushes back at 0748 local time and departs at 0805 local time. This would have been 0705 Jakarta local time. Quick side note, to keep things simple, from here on in, all times mentioned will be in Jakarta local time. As is perfectly normal, the flight crew reversed their previous roles. The captain now serves as the monitoring pilot, while the first officer takes over the flight controls. From the outside, the jet climbs steadily through tropical air, its navigation lights blinking against the morning sky. They climb initially to flight level 220, or 22,000 feet. The seatbelt sign clicks off. Flight attendants sweep the cabin for safety checks and start a light meal service. A flight attendant enters the cockpit, bringing snacks for the pilots. All normal, all routine. Both pilots initially monitor air traffic control via their headsets, with the cockpit loudspeakers also on at minimal volume. At 0737, the aircraft reaches its final cruising altitude of flight level 360, or 36,000 feet. Both pilots remove their headsets and increase the cockpit loudspeaker volume so that they can monitor radio communications. The captain, presumably tired, asks the first officer if he can rest. The first officer agrees. Within moments, the captain's eyes close. His breathing becomes slow and regular. He's asleep. The first officer is now alone at the controls, carrying both the flying and monitoring duties. He's fully aware the captain is sleeping, and he accepts the additional workload. For now, all is well and everything remains under control. At 8:22, the captain stirs and offers the first officer a chance to rest. The first officer declines. They exchange a few words for about 30 seconds. Then the captain settles back into sleep. The first officer continues to manage and monitor the flight, while to his left, the captain continues sleeping. At 0824, the first officer requests a heading of 275 degrees from Makassar area control to avoid weather ahead. The request is approved. At 0829, he checks in with the cabin by interphone about light turbulence. The flight attendant responds that the passengers are fine. At 0834, he reports the aircraft now on heading 250 degrees. Makassar area control acknowledges and instructs him to report when clear of the weather. He reads back the instruction. At 0842, Makassar instructs the flight to contact Jakarta area control. The first officer reads it back with practiced professionalism. Around 1 minute later, he makes initial contact with Jakarta area control. The controller instructs Flight 6723 to follow the Curus 2G standard instrument arrival and report when clear of weather conditions. At that moment, the aircraft is still on heading 250 degrees, about 125 nautical miles east of waypoint Curus. The first officer reads back the instruction. His voice betrays no hint of the battle being waged behind his eyes. A few moments after that final transmission, the wave hits. Impossible to fight. Sleep usually wins. The inevitable pull of circadian rhythm and exhaustion. The first officer's eyes grow heavy. His head tilts forward slightly, then snaps back as he fights it one final time. His eyes close. Now, no one is awake in the cockpit. No one to monitor the aircraft's progress through controlled airspace. Meanwhile, back in the cabin, passengers are well settled into the flight at this stage. The flight attendants move efficiently through their service routines, checking on passengers. None of them, passengers or crew, could imagine for even a second that both pilots are fast asleep in the cockpit just meters away.
Not surprisingly, the Airbus A320's sophisticated flight management computer continues executing its programmed instructions with precision, because this is exactly what it's designed to do: maintain stable flight. It's one of many safety layers that make modern aviation extraordinarily safe. But it can't make decisions about changing circumstances. It can't respond to air traffic control. And it can't evaluate weather conditions or adjust routes based on new information. It just follows human instructions. The aircraft holds its line, unwavering, unblinking. The flight crew had been cleared for a weather deviation. Once past the weather, no one was awake to return the aircraft to its planned route. So it didn't. It just kept flying, steadily off course. Airlines don't just fly wherever they want. Their aircraft follow tightly controlled routes, invisible highways in the sky, managed by one of the world's most sophisticated traffic management systems. These routes are designed with multiple layers of safety built in: separation standards that prevent conflicts, radar monitoring that tracks every aircraft, and communication protocols that ensure constant coordination between pilots and controllers. When Flight 6723 continues on heading 250 degrees, instead of rejoining its planned route, it's not just a navigation error. It's a deviation from a system designed around the assumption that pilots will respond to instructions and report changes. When the unexpected happens, controllers may understandably assume a hijacking, system failure, or worse. Especially in a post-9/11 world, it's a worrying situation. At first, nothing seems unusual to Jakarta area control. Weather deviations are routine in tropical airspace, where towering cumulus clouds can build to 50,000 feet and create hazardous conditions that require constant route adjustments. Controllers are accustomed to pilots requesting heading changes, altitude adjustments, and route modifications to avoid turbulence or thunderstorms. But as the minutes pass and Flight 6723 remains silent, first missing one radio check, then another, the routine begins to feel ominous. In modern aviation, communication is the thread that holds the entire system together. When that thread breaks, controllers must assume the worst while hoping for the best. At 8:56 Jakarta time, 12 minutes after the last recorded transmission from the first officer, Jakarta Area Control asks how long the aircraft needs to fly on the current heading. Silence. They try again. Still, nothing. They ask nearby pilots to relay messages. More silence. Each unanswered call transforms routine into unease, and unease into urgency. In modern aviation, radio silence isn't just a nuisance, it's a red flag. Meanwhile, the aircraft drifts further off its assigned track, not dramatically, but far enough to raise questions. And now, it's entering some of the busiest airspace in Southeast Asia. Controllers are left wondering, is this just a radio issue or something far worse? The ghost plane continues its silent journey, carrying 153 souls who have no idea that no one is watching over their flight. At 9:11 Jakarta time, 28 minutes after the last recorded transmission, the captain finally stirs and wakes up from his sleep. His eyes open to a cockpit that doesn't look quite right, not dramatically wrong, but subtly different in the way that immediately alerts an experienced pilot that something has changed. The navigation displays show a heading and position he didn't expect. The aircraft's track on the moving map display reveals a path that deviates from the planned route. He glances over. The first officer is still asleep. The realization hits instantly. The captain snaps his colleague awake and begins responding to the radio calls that have been going unanswered. His explanation to Jakarta Area Control is vague, a supposed communication issue that's now been resolved. While we cannot know exactly what the captain was thinking in that moment, the most reasonable interpretation suggests a face-saving answer that dodges the serious truth of what actually occurred. It's understandable. How do you explain to air traffic control that both pilots fell asleep? The aircraft was Nordo, aviation slang for no radio contact, for a full 28 minutes. The flight continues and lands uneventfully in Jakarta's Soekarno-Hatta International Airport. Passengers disembark quietly, gathering their belongings and moving through the familiar routine of arrival procedures. Most likely, they remain blissfully unaware how close they potentially came to a tragic ending. But the aviation safety system does not let incidents like this pass quietly. KNKT, Indonesia's National Transportation Safety Committee, opened an investigation. So, What was in store for the pilots? The preliminary report found that both pilots were asleep simultaneously, resulting in 28 minutes without radio contact, a finding that highlighted systemic factors that contributed to the incident. Company safety emergency procedures required cockpit checks every 30 minutes, but there were no detailed procedures on who should perform them or how. KNKT recommended that Batik Air develop specific guidance for implementing these safety checks. Before departure, the first officer had told the captain he had not rested properly. The report noted that the operator lacked detailed I'm safe guidance and recommended creating procedures to ensure pilots can properly assess their physical and mental condition before each flight. Although duty and rest limits were technically met, the case demonstrates that current regulations do not account for rest quality or personal circumstances that can severely compromise pilot performance. Thankfully, that cruising ghost plane with nobody awake in the cockpit never became a tragedy. In aviation, every incident teaches us something. This one taught us that even when humans fail, the systems designed to protect us can still succeed, and that there's always more to learn about making those systems even better. And as for the pilots, both were suspended by Batik Air. Their current employment status is not publicly known.